Hello, Godzillavangelists. This is just a quick heads up that my audio sounds pretty messed up in this episode. We're not sure what happened with it, but I'm gonna get it fixed up for next time, so don't worry. In any case, you have a fun episode ahead of you with two very different and yet very similar King Kong movies. And, of course, you can look forward to next episode, where we're going to cover Godzilla vs. Kong, hopefully coming out just a few days after the movie. In the meantime, enjoy. There is a legend of one man who persuaded his friends to watch every Godzilla movie ever made. This world is on the brink of destruction. We need you now, Godzillavangelists! Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, produced and hosted by Ryan Sargent, featuring Sam Schlenker and Joanna Brodecki. So, listeners, take this as a warning sign. We haven't improv'd in years, but in the spirit of the Anything Goes 70s, here is our seed, the Jessica Lange audition for King Kong 76. Mr. Diller, I've got Jessica Lange here for her audition.
Is she hot?
Very.
Great, send her on in.
All right, Miss Lange, go on in.
Hi, sir. Hello, Mr. Hollywood. Thank you so much for seeing me today. I don't know if you know, but I'm an Aries, and I just think it's perfect that I'm here right now.
Well, we are honestly...
Oh, whoops. Oops, sorry. My strap fell off my shirt. Let me just...
No,
really
please,
quick.
please use it, please.
So sorry about that, sir. Oh, my. I might pass out. Is it okay if I fall into your lap?
You're hired. I don't even need to hear anymore. You've never acted before, right?
Never, sir. But I'm a Yale grad.
Yale. Well, you know what? I don't care about that, but as long as you can drop a strap and fall on my lap and say you're an Aries, you are hired. I don't think I need to see any other applicants. Miss Streep, we don't need you. Let's shoot this thing.
Wow. Thank you. I thought this was going to be my big break, but...
Goodbye, Meryl. I can't wait to be a star.
I'll see you on the other side, Jess.
And there you have it, a glimpse into the past, the unseen past. And here to talk about the movies with us today is Kat Belinfante, a Brooklyn-based comedian, actor, writer, and yoga instructor. You can check out her new fictional comedy podcast, Love Criminal, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or I'm sure many other providers as well. A big warm welcome to Kat.
Thank you.
In case you couldn't tell, this is part 2 of our grand lead-in to another brand new Godzilla movie, Kong vs. Godzilla. Or is it Godzilla vs. Kong? I always can't tell. In any case, with all our years spent talking about Godzilla, we thought we'd at least give Kong a couple months of our time. And this episode, we're talking about the 1976 version of King Kong, as well as the 2017 Monsterverse entry, Kong Skull Island. This is the 1976 film. I'm showing my hand a little bit here, but to me is legitimately the most watchable of the 3 versions of King Kong.
What?
And I'm tremendously embarrassed to say that. Sam is rubbing his forehead, but it doesn't make it any less true.
That is a very hot take.
The 1976 film, I was watching it with Kat, and I was like, I think if there are any more things like this, I might have to just leave the podcast. I can't. I cannot watch any more of these hot, tripping women. Oh, we go to an island. No people on the island have lines. Like, oh my God. But Sam, you can speak to that as well, I'm sure.
The takeaway I had, and I watched it with Mac, who gave me good insights as well. But my takeaway is it's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it might be the dopiest movie I've ever seen.
That's a perfect word for it.
It's the dopiest movie. But wow, I don't know why I expected it to be better.
Because you saw Jessica Lange, Jeff Bridges, you're like, oh, this might actually be a movie that packs some meat, a real relationship, some real something to it. But it was astonishing, her performance, honestly.
But with another double feature, we've got to be quick on our prehensile 8 feet. So let's begin, shall we? Here we go with the synopsis of King Kong 1976. Sound effects at the ready. Fred Wilson, an executive at the Petrox Oil Company, finances an expedition to a hidden island where he believes oil will be found. However, stowaway primate paleontologist Jack Prescott believes that a unique primate is there instead. Soon after setting sail, their boat picks up castaway Dwan, and she and Jack begin to fall in love.
Ooh.
After reaching the island, they discover both crude oil and a giant wall where a group of natives are having a ceremony. It could just be a repeat of the last synopsis I did, but the natives desire Dwan for their god Kong, but the white people refuse and retreat to their ship. That night, the natives capture Dwan and tie her up behind the wall. She is picked up, of course, by King Kong. Jack, Fred, and the others take over the island, and a group sets off in search of Dwan, but is forced to camp for the night. In the morning, Dwan awkwardly bonds with Kong, while Jack and the rest of the rescue group follow after. Fred learns that the oil is useless, so he sets his sights on capturing Kong instead. Kong kills the rescue group, minus Jack and oil worker Bone. Bone helps Fred set up a trap with the rest of the ship's crew, and Jack rescues Dwan, while Kong is busy fighting a giant snake.
Yeah.
Kong chases them back to the wall where he falls in the trap. The crew places him in the ship's tank and manages to get Kong back to New York.
Aw.
Despite Jack's anger, Dwan's reluctance, and brief interruptions by a raging Kong. In New York, Jack angrily splits from Dwan when she refuses to leave Fred's publicity tour. Of course, at the very first show, Kong believes that photographers are hurting Anne and escapes. In his rampage, he kills Fred and destroys trains, but Jack and Dwan get away. They try to patch things up at a closed bar,
Grab a drink with me, Jack.
but Dwan is found and taken by Kong. Jack realizes he will take her to the World Trade Center, which resembles Kong's island lair. He gives this tip to the police department in exchange for a promise to capture and not kill Kong. However, despite the best attempts of Jack and Dwan, police helicopters mortally wound Kong and he plummets to the ground. Dwan weeps over his body, and Jack once again leaves her, knowing their lives will never be the same. I'm sure he called her at least Dawn once in that, because Dwan may be the stupidest name of all time.
Well, one of many stupid lines said in this film.
They clearly did everything they could to make her a sex idiot. Like, everything they could. Like, she is... They even gave her the name. It's kind of incredible.
Before she even speaks, they're talking about taking her clothing off.
The deep throat line right off the bat.
Do you think anyone's ever been saved by deep throat? Like, oh my god, how did Jessica stomach that? What?
To be fair, they did it twice. It wasn't even once. They made the joke. They called back the deep throat line. She's like, wow, to think I was just a moment ago saved by deep throat, and now... here I am. I remember when I said deep throat earlier?
Well, this was still on the tail end of porno chic, right? The so-called golden age of porno that Boogie Nights is about. So they had to slip it in.
Yeah, literally. I love, too, that she's, like, not even that sad. She's like, oh, no, he was going to cast me in a movie. But now I'm here. It's, like, just such not... like, really giving actors everywhere a bad rap.
Say, everyone... on my boat, all of my friends are dead, right? You guys saved me, you want to fuck? Here's the thing, and here's my take on the clothes, was you could not have cut men's clothing into those shapes. Those were absolutely some man's wardrobe on that ship. it had a lot of very hippie genes, as in they have a lot of like hip, and that was someone's clothes.
I feel like in the beginning they were like, let's make them look like man's clothes, and as it went on, they were like, here's a romper. They like stopped trying. They were like, nope, this is just female fashion. The audience will forget.
Well, when she went on the island, they were like, let's give her these little Mary Janes and this tiny little crop top like from Dukes of Hazzard. And it was like, yes, she's going to do very well in a tropical island in that.
The natives see her and they're like, yeesh, put some clothes on, God.
It's funny, there's a weaker justification for going to, I guess this is Skull Island, for going to Skull Island than in the original movie, which is pretty funny. They're just all there for some reason.
Oh, I thought it was a really searing critique of capitalism and big oil. Did you not? You guys didn't think that was the smartest, most in-depth critique you've ever heard? I thought they nailed it. Good job, 70s.
Like the part when King Kong is wheeled out under a giant oil pump.
That was very funny. I did laugh really hard at that, but I don't think it was funny in the way that I think they really thought that was quite an image.
I'm surprised capitalism survived after that. I mean, you would have thought.
Also, I love that he is just an oil guy, so when he does like his speech to Jack about like, either of you two leave, you'll never work in this town again, and it's like, what, in the oil industry? Like you can't stop either of us from being stars.
Also, like, are you going to really stop him from being a professor? I don't know that you have that kind of weight in the world. Ryan, I'm curious to hear what you find so easily watchable about the film. Because I think anytime Jessica Lange was on screen and anytime she like turned her head to the side or just like helplessly like put her arms around herself, like, what do I do? I'm cold, like for no reason. Just such a weird acting choice. I was like, okay, I hate this film with a passion.
Well, don't put me against the wall just yet.
Also, there was this one scene where the guy's like mansplaining. He's like, no, honey, you were raped. I was like, that's a line that should never be said. And then the next scene, Jeff Bridges is like, I think Kong had the right idea. And that's his pickup line to go in to make out with her. I was like,
From the original, there was always this unsavory implication of exactly what did Kong want. But this one like pushes it almost into the foreground, almost like directly asking the question, and it is thoroughly uncomfortable. This movie had some weird cross purposes because it was written by Lorenzo Semple, who was the head writer on the old 60s Batman show. So he wrote it as like a light, winky comedy, but then like when he saw it, he was like blown away at how they had like tried to do like a bunch of scenes seriously without like changing the setup or the dialogue or any of it. So it's kind of this glorious mess where it can't decide if it wants to be a goofy, winky King Kong comedy or like a serious tragedy.
Jessica and Jack's character were maybe supposed to have a little bit more of a wink behind them.
Yeah.
This movie made me really miss the last one we watched. Not the 1933 one, the other one. It made me miss the layers and the cool costumes and the woman going, Kong, put me down. Like, it made me miss that gal, even though she was also annoying.
Kong!
You mean you didn't feel at home when Dwan called Kong a male chauvinist pig ape?
Oh, right.
Again, they totally nailed it. Really good satire, guys. It is super dopey, and I was kind of okay with it, that it just was a dumb movie that didn't know what it wanted to be. And then the ending was such a, like, fuck you 70s tragedy that it, like, left me with a really bad taste in my mouth, and I don't really super love seeing Kong, like, seeping blood everywhere after really he was the only character, this, like, poor monkey. It's the only character that, like, I actually felt anything for in this whole thing. What would have been a kind of fun, dumb, light movie, like, really face-planted in a gross way to me. And so it really kind of lost me.
Interesting. Because, yeah, that scene in a vacuum is really effective, but like everything, it just doesn't go with anything in the movie. Like, didn't you even say, Joanna, that you cried after that scene, or was this the end of Skull Island that you cried at?
Oh, I cried. The end of Skull Island, the John C. Reilly
Okay,
bit.
all right, okay, never mind.
But I also thought the wall scene, like Kong trying to get out of the wall, was very effective in and of itself. Like, I was like, oh, this is terrifying, and this is very well put together.
Yeah, there's individual scenes like that, like even when they're like bringing her to the wall and Kong first appears, like the build up there is really good. That scene is shot really well, but it's just a glorious mess. And I don't know, I have like a soft spot in my heart for these movies that are like not quite bad enough to be good, but are like big and splashy. So it's like I love like seeing all the stuff that went wrong, like how much of a mess it is, but I also like that on an individual scene to scene level, it can be entertaining and good. I know that not many people like movies like that because they want them to either be like so horrible you can laugh at every scene or like actually good. But it falls in just like the sweet spot in my heart. I don't blame any of you for hating it.
Well, I think too, also like, contextualizing films in the time period they're from, right? Like, I don't know too broadly the scope of female characters at that time, but I imagine, unfortunately, like, I'm sure it was much improved from what was happening with Jessica Lange, but I don't know that it was like significantly improved to where we are today, right? But I think just hearing all those lines coming out of someone who you know is actually a very strong actor, like watching the 1933 Girl, I was like, who is this person? I don't know. But watching Jessica Lange, like there was one moment when she did this like frustrated scream when Kong was holding her, and I was like, there's the terrifying Jessica Lange that we love. But I think it was just like pretty a bummer to see that this was the project that she was introduced as, compared again to Meryl Streep. I think Kramer versus Kramer was her first one. Just totally different tracks there.
Yeah, like if I could definitely see like looking at it from like a real life perspective how it can be a bummer because she obviously was not placed in a very good position and it took her career like years to recover. But she ended up okay.
I don't know that I want to give this movie the excuse of time period. I think there are 70s movies that are more empathetic towards women. And they're, and that's not an excuse for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, like the scene with Kong, like ripping her top off, it was just like, what are we doing here? Why is this necessary? And that every line she had was idiotic. But yeah. I think it was maybe the worst I've ever seen for objectification.
Yeah, well, just even the way she moved her body, I was like, this is the director being like, all right, yeah, don't move like a human. The way that she was running, we were like, what is going on right now? They're like, run sexier.
Or they're like, go under the waterfall. Like, oh, I land on the beach. Let me just get on my all fours. Take a photo behind me.
To be fair, he did immediately snap some photos of Charles Grodin immediately afterwards. So that undercut it, where it's like, take some photos of me being sexy, and it's like, take some photos of me walking like a doofus. I thought it was funny that they got so much mileage out of Kong's hand. It's a weird thing to say, but it's very funny that there are just so many giant hand shots.
They really did.
I know that they had a hard time getting it to work, which is maybe why they showed it off so much. Because there were like occasions where it came very close to like breaking Jessica Lange's bones and stuff like that because it would suddenly like close. They had a hard time getting that hand to work.
What was it? What was it? A robotic arm?
Yeah.
That's why too. I'm always, again, whenever we watch these, I'm so deep in like, oh, they did it via digital, but it's like, no, that's not what was happening.
The Kong stuff was mostly pretty good. You're gonna hate this, Ryan. I'm gonna turn this movie against you and complimenting it, but I felt like the way that they did the man in suit stuff is they generally shot it in slow motion and shot up at him, and it mostly felt like he was a real, like he was a big guy, like he felt big, which is something that I think a lot of the Godzilla movies, granted they were much lower budget by the late 60s, but they just kind of abandoned that pretense, and they're just kind of like, we just, it's just guys in suits, things move at human speed, And, you know, and it's kind of like, that's kind of what this is. Like, it was fun to see this and be like, oh, they're doing the giant monster and man in suit thing in the way that conveys scale, and you kind of almost forget that it's a guy in a suit, which is kind of nice.
It's definitely shot well and with a lot more money than the other movies you were referencing there. So no harm, no foul. My heart's only slightly broken. But we should talk about something that they talked about in like all the publicity campaigns for this movie, which is that they built a life-size robot Kong, which did not work at all. So it's, I don't know if you can tell, but it's in like 3 seconds of the scene where he escapes the arena. But there's this like incredibly stiff life-size Kong they built that looked nothing like the suit. But they pretended that was the only thing in the movie, that they'd like done like some miracle of machinery where they built a walking 30-foot robot. And they tried to hide the fact that Rick Baker did like makeups and like a suit, and that was like 99% of it.
It's a pretty obvious shot. We noticed that and thought, they must have just put a giant monkey in just that one shot. It's super weird, but that makes sense. Didn't know that was their calling card.
That was the test run, actually, was that scene, and then they're like, okay, this doesn't work. We can't do it again.
No, absolutely not.
It broke in the middle of the first take they were doing, and the hydraulic line snapped right at the crotch. Hydraulic fluid was spraying right out of King Kong's crotch all over the crowd.
Wait, in real life that actually happened?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Imagine being an extra on that movie.
Oh my god. It's also funny because what was the name of the non-1933 one we watched?
King Kong Escapes.
Yeah, it's like a funny, weird, funny kind of twist on it that like they're also like, we're gonna build this King Kong robot. That's like such a key plot point of that film.
That's true.
And then for this movie, they're like, it must work. And it doesn't. When was Escapes made?
67, so 9 years before this.
But like, I thought Kong looks significantly better in this film than in 67.
Oh, sure.
You know, in some ways for the worse, because the looks, myriad of looks they shot of him looking at Jessica Lange was like, okay, we get it. All right, pull that camera away. No need to do this anymore, everybody.
Those creepy smiles are absolutely terrifying.
So wait, was that someone behind a mask then?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Whew, chills down my spine.
Yeah, I don't love that I now know that, but
I thought the only real line Jessica Lange had in the whole film was when she was like, Jack, grab a drink with me. Just grab a like if I fucking ran across the whatever bridge, Manhattan Bridge, I would feel the exact same way. I would be like, it's time for a cocktail.
The where have I seen that before thing with the Twin Towers, so stupid, because the answer is you've seen it because it's the World Trade Center. The most famous buildings possibly in the world at the time. And it's like, where have I seen this before? And the worst part was Mac and I both went, oh my god, it's those two mountains. Like that's going to be the reveal. But also, no, what kind of nonsense thing is he? Like, you don't say, where have I seen that before? About, like, if I walked past the Eiffel Tower and I was like, where have I seen that before? And then like remembered that I had seen like a weird pine tree that kind of looked like it. No, I've seen it because it's the stupid Eiffel Tower.
Also, like, do they resemble it that much? Like, no, they don't resemble those rocks that much. There's just no way.
That's a great example of like this movie's wrongness. Because in theory, that's good screenwriting, that you set something up and then pay it off. But in practice, they did it in like the dumbest way possible.
I'm just having deja vu. Was this, at what point in his career was he at right now? Jeff Bridges. Was he like already doing some stuff?
I think his first movie was Last Picture Show?
Yeah, it was his first big movie. So he'd been like clicking for like 5 or 6 years.
were you guys rooting for him? Because I liked him, and then I didn't like him, and then I didn't really care at the end. Like, I lost complete interest.
He gets really muddled up because he starts off like feeling like very passionate, like we gotta like find this beautiful animal and take care of it, and then like he wants to save Dwan, sure, okay, but then after that it's like you can't really like read him. Like, he's okay with Kong being captured, but then he's not, and then he signs a contract to be on the publicity tour, and then he backs out.
Right, and then he backs out for no reason.
He's waffling like crazy. I also, at first, I was like, wow, the hot socialist long-haired type of my dreams. And then midway through, though, yeah, he had a line in there where he was like talking about the everyone who lives on the island, and he's like, without Kong now, they'll all become drunks. And it was like, who are you? What are you saying? What? Do you hear yourself?
Yeah, I noticed on this watch that this movie has a racial slur in it, which I had never noticed before. It's kind of gross. This movie's actually more racist than the 1933 version, which is saying something.
I felt that too, and it was partially because you when you have a scene of a bunch of islanders who are all black people dancing around like, a made-up tribe, like you're already in murky territory here, to say the least. But the thing that was weird was in this, they were such pushovers and kind of like just vanished once the like white guys showed up. Like that felt grosser somehow than the 30s one, where there was like a little bit of like
a dialogue.
Yeah.
Like a minimal dialogue, a fucking very minimal dialogue in the 1930 film. But yeah, there's just no agency ever. And I agreed, it also felt very gross.
Yeah, wait, I was also wondering with the Islanders, like, what does he do with their sacrifice? Did he just like the white woman more?
That is a question that has been asked for all the King Kong movies, and rightfully so. Why does he have more attention for the white lady?
Oh, okay, good.
I'm glad they, I guess, don't directly address that in the film, but yeah, just again, I guess, going back to like the white male gaze of how this film is set up with her being sacrificed. I mean, you could say maybe they're saving someone who they actually know and deeply care about. I just don't know that it was set up in that way.
You guys are burning this movie down in front of my eyes. Let's talk about some good stuff. The score is really nice. It's got a great John Barry score.
I had a thought maybe 80% through the film and went, this score though? Really nice. And it was the first positive thought I had. And I then had the thought, wow, that is such a Ryan thought to have.
It's technically a Sam thought to have too, because he's the like legacy composer of all the classic James Bond movies. Once I saw his name, I was like, oh, hey, it's the Bond man.
The sound kept me invested.
Yes, absolutely. It helps like sweep some of the terrible stuff under the rug. And he comes up with a great King Kong theme to match the Godzilla theme almost. That dun 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 dun. I also think it does build a nice sense of foreboding in certain scenes, like gives you like the sixth sense, like, oh, something's about to go wrong.
And it also kind of builds the magic of like, even though it was like dark, kind of when her and Kong are alone, like there's kind of this sweet undertone for a second with it.
Like they could have been friends in another life if he had been a Pisces instead of an Aries.
I feel like, and maybe, I haven't seen it in a long time, but maybe the Peter Jackson one tries to do this, but I feel like there's a sweet spot in the middle of this and the 33 one, where it's like, there is a sweet spot between Kong holding her and kind of like, it's like really lovey-dovey and he clearly has sex on his mind, and the 30s one where it's just like, he's just terrifying and she just wants to escape. There's like a middle ground where it's like, oh, he clearly cares about her, but he's also kind of terrifying and you don't want to stick around for this. And I think maybe the Peter Jackson one tries to do that, but it's also, all I remember is that one's like 4 hours long. So I am glad we didn't have to rewatch that. But yeah, I don't know. I kept thinking that it's like, it felt like it was too light and romantic as opposed, and I didn't feel like there was enough adequate terror for how scary all this stuff should have been. Yeah,
there's points where it's like a goofy, like tongue-in-cheek monster movie, and there's parts where it's like a romantic tragedy, but never is it like a fun adventure movie, which is what you think of when you think King Kong.
And the looks that he was giving in the first half of the movie were so creepy to me that I thought it was a weird that was terrifying enough for me. And then I thought it was such a weird transition when suddenly they were like, no, now we love King Kong. We're not only like, hey, it's probably not right to take this animal from his home. They're like, no, we love him. We must defend him with all our heart. Like, I didn't think there was anything to fully justify that switch in the script.
Yeah, I see what you mean, where like her affection for King Kong does not make total sense.
I had a feeling or a thought during it that I think it would have been a whole lot more interesting if all of the men on the ship were kind of either disinterested or shitty to her. it's a weird thing to say, but like this weird, like she kind of has a thing with Jack and kind of has a thing with the monkey, but they don't really make a lot of sense. You don't know what she's thinking at any given time. A movie where she's on this ship and again, everyone's, disinterested or in Jack's case, like he's kind of full of himself or something, like to then be, kidnapped by this scary, like giant ape that kind of treats you okay is like a little more interesting to me. I didn't get how anyone felt about anyone at any time.
And it was so one-sided. They were like, we'll just have all the men on the ship drool over her. And then they're like, we'll just have Jessica Lange be like, oh, boys, the moon.
She has no reason to act the way she does around Kong because of that.
No.
Well, I guess the guys are like into her, like I don't know. It was sloppy.
I agree.
You know who's great in this, though? One of my favorite character actors of all time, Rene Auberjonois, who plays the geologist. He has like 5 lines, but they're all great, and he nails every one of them.
Is he the one who's like drinking Jack Daniels on the beach?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and he's like, you get better mileage putting mule piss in your cow.
He is great. I thought you were going to say Grodin, and I was about to be like, was he though? But no, yes, this guy was very good.
I liked when he was like, yeah, like 10,000 years from now. Yeah. I'd like to point out a few callbacks that they had to the 1933 film that I thought, wow, yep, they really just did it. The log roll. The log roll, I feel like, is a classic. And I thought, done better or worse, not really sure, but it happened. And them grabbing that there's always a poor lookalike to the lead female that they, like, when he grabs that woman out of the hotel in 1933 and grabbing that poor woman off the train and then just fucking chucking her into Brooklyn.
It was done so much funnier in this, like the original is like really like kind of scarring and tragic when he, they give it a real moment. And this one, he's just kind of like, oh, yoink, like do it in a wide shot. Just it's so silly, and it just feels so wrong.
For you, Kat, and for any new listeners at home, this is the point of the show where it is our holy duty to assign each movie a place in the afterlife, whether it be heaven, purgatory, or hell. In this case, King Kong, heaven, purgatory, and hell. So, 1976 King Kong is up to the plate. Sam, why don't you go ahead and start us off on a high note?
I'll start on the highest of notes. It's a hell for me, but I just want to say, it's not even much hesitation. I just didn't. It could have been a purgatory had it not ended tragically and grossly like that. And it's a very 70s ending. It just I don't know. None of it really worked for me. I will say I was curious what its reception was at the time, and the answer is mixed. But I did see that it got a very positive review from Pauline Kael, who I'm sure basically was a kind of movie reviewer from certainly through the 60s and 70s, and maybe even before that. And she is famous for always being the naysayer on seemingly every absolute bona fide classic. So it's like movies that Pauline Kael hated are Lawrence of Arabia, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and It's a Wonderful Life. And like every like beloved classic has a negative, review from her, but she did really like this movie. So for what it's worth, Pauline Kael gives it heaven. I'm a hell myself. But it was, I enjoyed it enough.
To be fair to Pauline Kael, she did also change the face of movie reviewing when she gave Bonnie and Clyde a good review and got the New York Times critic kicked off his job because he gave it a bad review.
Wow.
She did. She was very important and very interesting. This is not a hate on Pauline Kael for liking it situation. It's just very funny.
A, I love all the trivia I always learn, on these pods. And B, I love that you were like, it's hell, and it's a hell for me. But it was all right. It was all right.
I don't have much else to say about it, I guess, so I don't know why I'm still talking.
Joanna?
Yeah, I think not surprisingly, going to be a hell for me. Said it before, I'll say it again. I think the gratuitous objectification, overt racism, the strong white male gaze all throughout made it really a cringe-worthy film to watch the entire time. And I think that that piece, like maybe it was supposed to be more on the cheek, but then at the end they spent, 20 minutes shooting him up. They had that terrifying like flame burning on him. None of it worked for me except the music at that one point in the film when I went, pretty good score. Otherwise, I would say I was actually really excited for it because of the cast. I was like, wait a second, maybe this will be... And then I think I was severely disappointed. Oh, and they did accurately display how you feel when you're like, you hear the train and you're like, oh my God, I have to run to catch the train. That run up the stairwell was very accurate to real life as well. So I also appreciated that moment.
Okay, so it's got a little bit of New York grittiness, especially the part where the police say they're going to shoot the looters on sight.
Oh, yeah, that line.
I almost forgot about that, Jim. And with that, Kat, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm also going to give it a hell. I enjoyed watching the first half with Joanna. And how much she was offended on behalf of actors everywhere. The first 30 minutes, she's like, see, this is why actors get a bad rap. This is why actors get a bad rap. Just hearing her repeat that over and over again did make me laugh. But yeah, hell for all the reasons we've said. Although the moment that I enjoyed was watching Jessica Lange try to break up with Kong. When she was like, it's not going to work out for us, Kong, don't you see? And just trying to be straight with him. I was like, well, that still applies to today, How do you break up with a oppressive man, ape, chauvinist pig?
He's the least chauvinistic, though.
Yeah, well...
Isn't Kong kind of the least problematic of the men in this movie?
Wow.
That's an interesting point.
He is literally kidnapping her, so I don't know if that lends a new tone.
Well, that's accurate. Ryan, you bring up a good point.
If he didn't look at her in that way so much, and the part where he fingers her top off, then he might have stood a chance.
All right, Ryan, have we convinced you? Where are you at?
Yeah, my opinion has changed over the course of what we've got so far.
Good job, team.
You were going to put it in super heaven, and now it's down to just regular heaven.
I was initially going to put it in heaven because, it's always been, one of the great bad movies to me. And I know that it's not, full bad movie, but just so enjoyably messy. I love seeing money burning on the screen. I love, high-budget bad movies. So it was, a big hit for me in this way. So I was always you know what? Problematic elements, acknowledge them, move on. It's kind of a blast. But, hearing you guys lay the problems out, no, it's kind of hard to push past these things. And it kind of is. So I will say, if you could still, take everything in context and be this was bad, this was always wrong, but I'm going to watch the goof now. I still find it enjoyable in that regard. But that's a lot to get past. So I am going to have to reluctantly put this in hell. Also because I heard the racial slur in the movie for the first time, and that makes it a lot harder to ignore those things.
Is this our first straight flush?
I think this may be our first straight flush. Here we go with Kong Skull Island sound effects at the ready. In 1944, American pilot Hank Marlowe crashes on Skull Island along with foe Gunpei Ikari. The men duel until they are interrupted by a gigantic ape. 29 years later, as the Vietnam War comes to a close.
Montage, classic Cold War shit. Cold War montage.
Monarch head Bill Randa secures a deal to visit Skull Island with a Landsat team and a military escort. The group ultimately includes tracker Conrad, photographer Weaver, and tightly wound Colonel Packard. They sail to Skull Island and use helicopters to make their way through a strange storm system surrounding the island.
Think Apocalypse Now.
I like how these are metaphorical sound effects that we're throwing in now. Soon after, the copters drop seismic charges, ostensibly to learn about the island's geology. But they actually flush the giant Kong out of the jungle. Angered, the big ape crashes every copter, killing many soldiers and scattering the remaining groups into different places. Packard, angered by Randa's lies and the deaths of his soldiers, sets his group off in search of Major Jack Chapman's copter, which has munitions he believes can kill Kong. Meanwhile, Conrad and Weaver's group runs into the still-alive pilot Marlowe, who is friends with the native Iwi villagers.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Marlowe tells the Americans about Kong, the last member of a group of giant apes who protected the Iwis from the monstrous skull crawlers. One such monster was responsible for killing Gunpei and slays Chapman as well. Maybe not the same one, we don't know. Conrad and Weaver's group helps Marlowe finish a boat he built with Gunpei, but not before Weaver has an encounter with Kong that leads her to believe the giant monster is sentient. The next day, the Americans set out on the boat and make contact with Packard's group. The colonel forces everyone to search for Chapman, but they are instead ravaged by a skull crawler hiding in a mass grave. With Randa dead and Chapman's body discovered, the group breaks into an argument and splits again. Conrad takes nearly all living civilians to connect with a rendezvous point on the north side of the island, while Packard leads the soldiers to kill Kong. After another friendly encounter with Kong, however, Conrad, Marlowe, and Weaver decide to protect him. They arrive just in time to stop the soldiers from killing a wounded Kong, but with the protector down, a giant skullcrawler emerges. Kong kills Packard, but is initially overpowered by the giant monster. The remaining humans rally to help King Kong fight, and the skullcrawler is killed.
Flare.
The remaining humans rally to save King Kong, and the skullcrawler is killed. Conrad, Weaver, and the rest are rescued, and Marlowe finally returns home to his family after nearly 30 years. Aww.
I love an ending credit scene. I love it.
Joanna, later I'll tell you a surprise secret about that ending credit scene you're referring to.
Not to blow the load early, so to speak. But Sam, did you not have a connection with this movie?
I was an editor on that ending. Technically, I was an editor on the part where it becomes like 8mm footage and he comes home and sees his family again. I am the editor for the company that did the treatment of that and basically did the end title design. In that case, I essentially just matched what the editor of the film did to that sequence. I didn't cut together that scene because they were intentional about wanting it that way and I didn't mess with it, which sometimes happens. But my innovation, and the thing I will take credit for, and this is so stupid, and I told Mac this while we were watching it, and she was like, wow, it was a sarcastic wow. It's the window in the frame, which I made the decision of how big that window should be. Hear me out, it gets better. I also, this was like early on in my career. It's in the center of the screen, and I don't know if you notice, but at one point it sneaks over to the left and credits start coming up, and you don't see it sneak, or at least you're not supposed to. And I figured out where and how to sneak it without people noticing it.
Okay, see, I thought that was a very smooth sneak. I specifically was watching it and went, wow, I am so excited they're showing this scene. Oh, and now they're rolling the credits. And then I thought, I love a credit scene. So very well done. Beautiful work, truly.
We're genuinely proud of you, and we're going to have a little mini-sode related to this soon. But for now, yes, we wanted to reveal that Sam had his fingerprints.
That was my first contribution. Yeah, it was my first contribution, and not my last, to this series.
Guys, this movie made me miss going to the movies, buying a bunch of buttery popcorn, and just watching a loud movie.
Yeah, this is like a fun, blockbuster adventure movie, but it has a little more personality than like your average Disney contentosphere piece. It's definitely not the deepest movie, but it's like it's got fun characters, it's got fun visuals, it's not brain dead. It's like it's just a good time. That's kind of its whole vibe.
Brie Larson was wearing pants that you would legitimately maybe wear in a tropical jungle. Like you could be like, there are gonna be bugs, there are gonna be plants. I should wear these pants. And I believed it.
She moved like a human being instead of like a sexy snake. Yeah, why not run through the characters? There's a whole bunch of them. Most of them don't matter. Most of them, the other ones are played by LA improv scene comedians. But they do a fine job.
In support of the random smaller, like kind of the smaller characters, I thought they were all good. This was the best example I could think of a movie where I was more interested in the just random soldiers than I usually am. The one guy who ends up unnecessarily blowing himself up with a grenade was just like great. We're just like, he only has a handful of lines, but we like him. He's fun.
It's the Ridley Scott approach.
I agree. And I liked their relationship to each other. Yeah, even if their relationship to each other was a little obvious at points, I was still like there for it.
I was bummed every time someone died, which I couldn't say for the other film.
When he got thrown against that cliff,
a little mini heartbreaker. It's like, oh, he didn't even get like his heroic sacrifice.
No, he didn't. I liked it because Ryan, we've talked about not liking the like suicide, like someone inevitably kills themselves to save everyone, and it's never that justified. In this case, it was, but I just love that it ended up being a complete waste. It's just so it just doesn't even get that moment. It's just so funny to me.
It felt realistic to how it might actually go.
Eugene Cordero is one of the soldiers, probably one of the more boring ones. Mark Evan Jackson, super ego, is the Landsat scientist, who's very funny, but he plays the same character he always does, which is like a humorless, uptight bore, but he's good at playing that character. Then moving on to the more main characters, we got Tom Hiddleston as Conrad in a very obvious Apocalypse Now homage. Brie Larson as Mason Weaver, great character. She's filling in the Jack Prescott role from the last movie we watched, See Both Photographers.
I felt like he was auditioning for a Bond film in the first scene with Tom Hiddleston.
That's one of my nitpicks, is he's set up as like this like jaded badass, but like almost immediately he's like kind and like cares about other people and like starts opening up to them. And I'm like, why did you give him that character introduction if he was going to be like just a kind of squeaky clean hero?
I think that the two weakest parts of the entire movie to me are our two hot leads. I think Hiddleston and Brie Larson, not because of them per se. I just thought those were the flattest characters in the whole thing.
There were just a lot of like one line, like this is the line in the script. I think it was something where he was like, "How are you okay?" And she was like after absolutely crazy shit happened, she was like, "I don't even think I can have a response for that right now." And it was such a like script line. Like no one would fucking talk like that in real life. Yeah, I thought their chemistry was like fine enough to be like, sure. But yeah, I wasn't really like rooting for it. I thought John Goodman's character was also a little not fully right.
Yeah, I was just going to say he's a little wasted too. I think because he wanted to spend 5 days on set and no more. Because he basically allows for the setup and has no other purpose in the movie.
I think they could have been one. I think he and Hiddleston's characters could have been one character. Is the thing, because Hiddleston doesn't actually, for being a tracker, he doesn't actually do any tracking in the movie. Brie Larson mostly just takes photos at night when it's way too dark to take photos. Hiddleston and Larson end up wanting to basically save Kong, and I think just the guy who works for the organization who wants to go and find Kong should just be that character. They never once needed a tracker, so that's my. I understand them thinking that they needed a different lead other than Goodman, but I think those in writing could have been one.
I agree. I think because there are two leads were like set up as like with Brie and Hiddleston, we're like, these are our two leads. There are leads, but they don't have that significant a more significant amount of screen time than the smaller characters. So it's kind of like we're just like told to believe it, but they don't really build it up at all. Also, they don't ever say like how they just like meet in that secret don't cross locker basement area. And they're like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And it's like, oh, we're supposed to know these characters are flirty. Oh, they like each other, but that's kind of it for their backstory.
But because they want to sell the Chinese, they don't kiss. The lead should have been John C. Reilly, but obviously they don't want to rock the boat by making him the main character in a blockbuster movie. But he was the one who had like all the proper setup and like the stakes. That was like, he's like the emotional center of the movie, and he's really good. There's like a couple of lines where I think he's doing like semi-improv stuff, and it's a little too goofy. It feels like out of tone, but like apart from that, I really love everything he does.
It's so funny that you thought they were improvised, because I thought that there were some parts, kind of jokes that were overwritten, and I was gonna say that if John C. Reilly can't sell your joke, then like basically no one can, because he's the best. But I completely agree, and I will say, to me, not to move on to the next one, but the real standout is, you know, basically kind of the villain of the movie. I think that Samuel L. Jackson's great in this. I think his character is awesome too.
His Icarus monologue, at first I was like, oh, come on. But by the end of it, I was like, all right, I'll give it to you. I would believe that this man in this fucking nightmare of a storm would just like cool as a cucumber be like, remember the Icarus.
Someone who had just lost the Vietnam War and just really wants to like to win something and kill something is just like, that's what a great villain. Like and to hear that it wasn't originally going to be a Vietnam War movie or era movie, just like that, it wouldn't have been the same. But his kind of his thing, I thought was just really fun.
I loved when they were trying to get him to not go to kill Kong, and then Brie Larson has a line, and you're like, ugh, is he gonna like listen to her? Like, this is so unrealistic. And he's like, bitch, shut up. And he just completely dismisses her in the like most perfect Samuel L. Jackson way.
Yeah, they gave him like 3 Samuel L. Jacksonisms. That's one of them. The Icarus speech is kind of one of them.
No, also though, him looking at Kong, like him insisting on staying there right before he gets squashed, I was like immediately thrown back to Deep Blue Sea, where he's like making this big speech, and then that shark just fucking jumps out of the water and drags him into the tank. So I was like, all right, I'll take him in either of these scenes. Like, I love it.
I think he is getting a reputation for like being in anything, but it's definitely not deserved for this one, because he actually has like a little bit of meat to the character, and it's well done. I mean, like, I feel if you're listening to this, you've already watched the movie, but if you haven't, he's good.
and John Goodman's really good. Like, John Goodman's really good with what he has.
I guess with John Goodman, like, you just want you want to see more of him, because you know he would be like a fun villain, or to have a little bit of extra.
True. I think you're supposed to feel surprised even when he gets eaten by the Skullcrawler, like 2/3 through the movie. I'm not, but I think that's the impression you're supposed to get.
I was surprised every time. I was like, no, they're not gonna kill off another like big person.
I was shocked by the Landsat guy who got torn apart by those birds, though. I had forgotten that happened.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that guy who just never wanted to be there in the first place. Oh, he had a sad arc.
That was gruesome, and like a great like tone shift moment, because like before that it's like, yeah, we got the boat to work, and then he just gets snatched.
Also, the whole time I loved that like the group that met up with John C. Reilly like had it pretty easy. Like they just like saw that cool fucking water buffalo, and then they like found, you know, a space where they knew they would be safe and were allowed in by the people who lived there, and who, again, no lines, you know, we'll say that improvements can be made in that regard as always. But the other group, man, they were really put through the ringer time after time after time again.
Which totally worked. Like, you know, they were being pushed to the edge. That scene when they fight, like, the spider that's disguised as the bamboo might be the best action scene in the movie. It's really tense. I really like it. And it's scary, too.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say next. The characters of, like, the animals on the island. We can get to Kong last, but, like, I thought all of the creatures on the island were so cool.
Yeah, I love the bamboo spider, the big mossy water buffaloes, the octopus that Kong turns into sushi.
And I liked that they did all have kind of different personality aspects to them. Kat, what was your switch of brain, you know, going from watching the first, because you haven't really seen any of these films we've seen. But like watching the first one and then watching this one.
Yeah, I was like, all right, here we go. Another one. And then I was like, wait a minute. I'm liking, and like I also don't like action movies really, or like Marvel movies. So I was just like, okay. But it had I was like, oh, and another actor I like, and a story that I'm following. And it actually was fun. The action monster elements of it. It like surprised me how much I enjoyed it.
Yes, another convert.
Ryan's heart is warmed. Also, I just got a text from my mom. Oh, love Skull Island. Love Tom Hiddleston.
Similarly, Mac really liked it. I was surprised at how much she liked it. We kind of, the movie ended and she's just like, wow, that was great. And I was like, oh, I don't know why I didn't expect. I mean, I didn't know. I hadn't actually seen it.
I was surprised how much I liked it. And then I was like, was it just because I haven't seen like a blockbuster film in a theater so long and I'm really yearning for it? I feel like films like this sometimes can have points where they're really dragging, but I feel like they kept the new kind of pieces of the puzzle coming quick enough that I stayed engaged the whole time.
I thought so too. And bringing John C. Reilly in when they did was just, it was like the perfect timing. I like that they didn't shy away from the comedy of it all.
I wanted to put in my last tiny defense of the 76 King Kong movie by laying out these similarities between them. The opening is so similar that it defies the possibility that it's a coincidence. So the setup for this movie owes a debt to the 1976 King Kong. Like, they have the same slide presentation, which is shot the same way. They talk about, like, the satellite passing over. They talk about how there's a cloud bank surrounding the island, which has hidden it for all these years. They take place in the 70s. They use seismic charges as a key plot point in the first half of the movie. It's like, the setup is so weirdly strange. I remember being in the theater and being distracted by it. Do you guys agree that at least the opening is intentional?
Coming at it from recently seeing the 1933 one and then seeing the 1976 one, I think I went into it being like, okay, this is just going to be... Because 1976 to 1933, obviously, like, it's like boop, 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 the log roll, the jaw snap. It's like point for point a lot of the ways. I thought that it was going to like all be the same. So I think at the beginning I was kind of like, okay, yep. Knew this was going to be where it was. And then I was happy with where it went instead, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like the beginning felt intentional, but it was like, it would be hard to make a Kong movie and not have similarities, in my opinion. And as an audience member, like, there's like, I like that it kind of set it up with a certain expectation and then it was just so much better than the 76 one to me.
To just remind you again, Ryan.
I'm with Kat. I think those are cosmetic similarities. I don't know that they were like, I mean, I can see thinking that. Certainly the cloud bank idea, sure. I think they probably referenced it. I mean, you're making a movie about 1970s King Kong. You're absolutely going to watch the 70s, the King Kong movie that came out in the 70s. But I also don't think that saying that's a similarity quite counts, because I don't think that the 70s one chose to set the movie in the 70s. It's not as much of a choice.
I know. I'm having a little bit of a goof here, but I think it's undeniable that they pulled some stuff. It's owed its due as a regard, even if the movie itself is pretty damn rough.
I think they probably said, okay, this intro seems like maybe we could use it, and the rest, no, we can't possibly go that route.
This is my favorite look for King Kong. He's got like the right combination of like real ape and like weird like man yeti kind of thing going on. I really love how he looks, and yet he's got those like soft, sweet eyes.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know from previous episodes that I always like loved the Kong that was just like the drunk grandpa, kind of like not harmful, like not too harmful. So seeing the 1976 one and the 1933 one, but mainly the 76 one where he was so fucking creepy, I was like, disgusting. I don't like Kong at all. I don't know why I ever said it before, and I take it all back and I hate it. And then watching this movie, I was like, oh, yay, I can like him again. I thought his face, like the way they really, whenever he would roar, make him look like a lion. I thought all of that. I just thought he looked great. And Ryan, it almost pains me to say it because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm jumping too deep. But I thought like that scene where he was drinking water before the octopus came up, I thought like certain shots of him were, dare I say, like even beautiful, like really well done. And I really enjoyed watching them.
I like he seemed almost afraid to say that.
I know, because I'm like, is it too corny, dare I say?
I've been so corny on this show. You should feel free to at this point.
And I like the fact that like with Brie Larson, he saved her, but he didn't like wait to see if she was alive. He like brought her up and then he walked away. And I felt like that was realistic. Like he's not going to have this like big, huge connection with her. He's just going to be like, oh, I deemed this person decent enough. Let's see if they live and I will go back to my life.
Yeah, I feel like they did a good job of making the moments tender between him and the people, especially Brie Larson, where it wasn't overly done, like you were saying. But it's just like a brief moment of connection and a like acknowledgement of like, you're a being that I'm not going to destroy because, and then it made sense. It's like, oh, he was going after the other people because they were like dropping bombs and they were going to wake up the awful skull crushers. So also a fan of this Kong. Wasn't a skeezy Kong, which was nice.
This was a truly asexual Kong in comparison to what we see.
Yep. As he should be.
Yeah, as he should be. As he always should be. Him as protector too, like I feel like in some of the other films, it's like he's protector of the island, kind of, and also in a way there's this relationship if he's just not killing them, but this time it really felt like, oh no, he is 100% the protector of this island. Oh my god, I'm like fangirling out on Kong. I'm like, I love Kong. I'm like, get me a poster, I'll hang it in my room. Like, Sam, take over, please.
I mean, I wish he wasn't asexual. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm with you guys. So I had a thought. This is really going deep nerd, and Ryan, I'm curious what you think, but I agree. I really like the way he looked, and I think he is inevitably, and you know, whether we like it or not, I think he is more. What's the word? I think we can more easily. He looks so human in so many of his expressions that we can connect with Kong easier than we can connect with Godzilla. Kong has kind of like, there's a thing where he sort of cares for humans in kind of like a deep part of his brain where he never really keeps kind of developing a mild crush on a woman or at least sees people and knows that there might be good in them in some way. And I feel like the correct way to do Godzilla would be that he's just completely inevitable. He's a nuclear bomb. He's completely inevitable. You can be on his side. He's not going to go out of his way to kill you just for kicks. But he's, you know, it's like he's Jewish God and King Kong is Christian God. And like that, I think would be fun, and I don't think they're going to do it. But it's kind of a bummer that they kind of are just interchangeable in the way that it's like whatever the plot services.
That was really nerdy. Maybe the nerdiest thing you said on the show. So I'm proud of you. I think that's a popular viewpoint. I'm so sentimental about Godzilla that I kind of like soften him more than the typical Godzilla fan would. But I can agree because I think even in my headcanon, like the idea is Godzilla was so hurt by what humanity did to him, you know, making him an aberration, a mutation, alone in the world. Whereas Kong, at least in this canon, is sort of like grew up with humans and like coexisted with them, and they were always like good and friendly to each other. I think there's like two different takes on the same thing. Like Godzilla's the bad boy and King Kong's the goody two shoes in this lineup. There's definitely some fun action scenes. I love how they play with color in like the mass grave scene with the deep green poison gas and like the yellowish sky and the fumes coming off the corpses. It's a really visually interesting scene.
Yeah, I loved the whole last like 30 to 40 minute action sequence, however long it was. And there are some films like Wonder Woman, I'm always like, but this one I was totally here for. And I thought particularly that final scene, I just thought was really, really well done. I thought the pace of it was good. I thought the inclusion of all the different characters at certain points, like Brie Larson standing on top of a mountain, like maybe a little corny, sure, but I'll allow it. And I thought the rest of the inclusion of all the other characters was really great. And I thought that some of the moments they had when he was attacking, when he was battling the skull crawler. Like, I think my roommate, she made fun of me. She's like, I genuinely heard you be like, like a few times throughout it, and be like, what? Like when that second one came out and got him right after he picked up Bree, I was totally not expecting that. And then them having that part where his arm gets pulled down by its tongue. Then they show his face for a second and he's like truly out of whack, like not in control, unaware, like maybe a little scared. And then he pulls its like brain, intestines, I don't know, fully out. They spilled the brains out of those things constantly. And again, I really didn't expect it. I thought this film, they were just like, oh, we're making another Kong because we can. So we're going to.
I have never felt like these Monsterverse ones are my favorites, but what I can always appreciate is that the people who make them seem to have like a point of view or like a twist on it they want to make, and that they all treat the monsters like characters, which is all I really want out of these movies, is the monsters are characters that are involved in the plots.
Samuel would have done it regardless. There was like one other part that kind of was a similar thing, which, by the way, I've had this level of kind of like, it's really close to being really clean, but there's like a little funkiness with all these Monsterverse movies. Certainly with Godzilla King of the Monsters, there were a lot of them. But again, still liked that one too. But the other thing was them deciding to go off and find the one guy, the soldier who is abandoned, like, is weird in a number of ways, and I can't quite figure out which part is the problem. And it's not wrong. It's just like a little funky, and it's like they decide to go get him even though we already know he's dead is a little odd. And it's like, and they don't, but it's still kind of weird. And then similarly, it's like they find his where his body would have been, but the only reason they figure out that he's dead is because conveniently a monster coughs up his skull and his dog tag, which is perfectly clean.
Right, like on top of his skull. That's very funny.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's like that stuff happening is right. It's just like a little odd, and there was like a couple little things like that. And this isn't to hate on the movie because it does so many things right. It's just like there are little things that like keep it from being like really super like just, again, like clean is the word. It's not the cleanest movie, but it has a lot of good stuff, and it overall works, and the spirit is right. It gets all the big stuff right.
I thought that plot point was very suspect as well, and I thought that like it made sense at first, but then when you see all the people who are getting killed because of this plot point to save that one person, it doesn't make sense. And then eventually it's revealed that Samuel L. Jackson wants to go after these weapons, but I think like we weren't super let in on that. And so I think Samuel L. Jackson did a good job with the character, but I think if they had also had maybe one more scene of him having like a tipping point, whether it was something on his own or something they did a flashback from the war, I think like the movie didn't set him up fully to have this like total kind of breakdown. But yeah, I think that was a lacking part, but I just kind of was like, oh, well, I expected worse, so I'll allow it.
I guess it's a good thing that we're talking about, like, oh, it was so close to being great. It's a good sign that we're that close to feeling that way about it. Let us dive into the judgment, starting off this time with Joanna.
Yeah, I think I would put it in heaven because I would definitely watch it again. I enjoyed watching it. It surprised me how much I enjoyed watching it. Was it a perfect film? No, but for one of these like high budget, we're just going to throw a bunch of names together in something. I personally liked it a lot more than the recent Godzilla film. You two can fight me on that if you'd like. But I think, again, the whole time I was home over the holidays, my mom was like, oh, want to watch Skull Island? Anytime it was on cable TV. And I was like, no, Mom. She's like, it's really good. And I was like, okay, Mom. But, next time she says that, I'll maybe say yes and give it another viewing. And I just thought like the I really liked, I thought the world was beautiful, and all of the creatures that they built within it I thought were really beautiful, and so I greatly appreciated that. And Brie Larson, all her outfits made sense.
Kong Skull Island, #1 monster movie choice for mothers. All right, I'll do mine. I also put it in heaven. I think what I would say, if we want to compare it to Godzilla King of the Monsters, it makes me less happy in the sense that that one is such like a fan service movie, like perfectly scratches like what I want out of a Godzilla movie in a lot of ways. But this is easily the better made movie. I think if you were ever trying to like convert somebody, like make them a crossover fan of giant monster movies, this is a great place to start, because it's just like a really fun action movie where you care about the characters, and it's surprising and fun. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of places where it could have been more unique or more affecting or better written, but it was like made in the big studio system, so it's hard to blame them too much for that kind of stuff. So yeah, I have no problems putting Kong Skull Island in Kong heaven.
I'll also put it in heaven. Just such a surprise for me. I've gotten in many an argument with my parents about why do the movies like this get made. They're just blowing money and they have no point to them. And I felt like, I don't know for sure if I was like, here's like what I'm taking away, but I was like, there is a value to this entertainment, which was nice and quite a surprise for me. I very much enjoyed it. I think I'd watch it again with my parents. You know, like I don't know that I'd watch it again on my own because it was kind of long, but it could feel like a family movie. It was a good movie if you're like trying to convert someone, because here I am putting a monster movie in heaven.
That's great. See, this is what it's all about, is bringing people into the cult of Godzilla. That's our next step, is to get you to enjoy a Godzilla movie.
All right, let's not get carried away. I feel like the hints at all the Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness stuff, I was like, either go harder or back off. It was like very like, and now here's a scene that's similar, but we're not gonna like fully go into it.
I am also a heaven. By the way, since I just neglected to say it earlier, shout out to the Skullcrawlers that I think are great. What a great villain monster. They're so creepy, and the 2 legs, the fact that they only have 2 legs is awesome. I loved it. But yeah, I am a heaven as well, so we just did a straight flush again. And I am kind of with both of you, or all of you, but you know, Joanna, I think I also enjoyed it the most of all of the Monsterverse movies. Although I clearly enjoyed the last Godzilla movie more than you did, I think. But it's certainly the most solid of them, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you're right, like there's something, to Kat's point, there's something about it, I can't put my finger on it, but it's like it's a popcorn entertainment movie, but it's also it's got something that doesn't feel completely disposable, if that sort of makes sense. And I don't know what it is exactly, but it wasn't like an example is like, not as a criticism of like Jurassic World, but like, I walked out of that and I was like, oh yeah, and it was fun. And then like this, there was something about it that I felt more than that, and I can't put my finger on what it was. So it's a heaven.
King Kong does more. Before we go to our outro, I do have a cute story I just remembered, which is a couple of years ago, I was on vacation on the East Coast, and my uncle is like 77 years old or something like that. He's like going deaf. So it's like kind of hard to like communicate with him over a lot of stuff. But one night says in like his southern accent, like, Ryan, come here, you gotta see this movie. And Kong Skull Island is on TV, and he's just like, look at this big monkey, isn't this great? And so he just sat and watched Kong Skull Island for like 20 or 30 minutes, and it was really sweet. So it's like, it's the kind of movie that connects with everyone, regardless of age. We have a fan letter here from Jorge C. This was a little bit of a longer one, so I am going to leave some parts out. Sorry, Jorge, but thank you for writing us. He says, I just wanted to convey my profound appreciation. I've been a G-Man fan since I was a little boy. The first Toho films I recall seeing on my local NYC broadcast station were Monster Zero and then War of the Gargantuas. And then he talks a little bit about a very fun song from War of the Gargantuas, but we'll get to that soon. Then he says, anyhow, love you guys. And no, I don't have a favorite among you three. Like the Beatles, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Although I must say that Sam endeared himself to me for all time when he laid out his Raymond Burr Sixth Sense theory. That was inspired genius! 2 exclamation points. Keep up the great work.
Aw, thank you.
Look, you just endeared yourself to me, Jorge C.
Yeah, for forever. Sam's ego is going to take that for the next 6 months.
I don't even remember what that was, honestly, so I got to listen back.
Yeah, you have to go listen to that episode. I think it was that because he's so badly edited into all those scenes that he's actually dead and doesn't realize he's not interacting.
That does make sense.
That's my memory of that theory. But yes, thank you again to Kat for joining us today. Again, you can check out her new podcast, Love Criminal, on wherever podcasts are sold. That's a joke, wherever they're provided. If you have anything else you'd like to plug to the lovely people.
Oh, no, you can follow me on Instagram and I'll promote all of my doings there at Kat Belinfante. Or Twitter. I need to grow a Twitter following, so check me out there too. At Kat Belinfante on all the things. Google my name, you'll see me.
I'm also bad at Twitter, so maybe we'll get better at Twitter together. But again, thank you for being here and for putting yourself on the line to watch these silly monster movies with us.
It was a surprising treat.
Thank you all for listening. It helps us so much when you tell people about us. Hey, check this out. Show them some of the better episodes. Or you can share us on social media. That helps even more. Subscribing to us if you haven't already on your podcast provider, just so you're always getting the newest episode whenever it comes out. And we're being a little more consistent about it, I promise. Follow our social medias. That's great. Send us an email. We'll read your letter or comment, as you just heard. And the thing that helps us most is if you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That's a little easier than it used to be, so please, if you have a few minutes, just make it happen. It would really help us out. But thank you all for listening. And until next time, keep spreading the word of King Kong and Godzilla.
Bye. Roar.
Ah.
Godzillavangelists is produced by me, Ryan Sargent, with support from my friends Joanna Brodecki and Sam Schlenker. All our incredible music is composed by Robert Mai, and our wonderful artwork is drawn by Cassidy Stone. This episode was edited by the ever-capable Julia Waldman. Special thanks to our families, friends, and the talented artists who made the movies that we talked about today. Godzillavangelists is a satirical, critical work, not affiliated or endorsed by Toho, Legendary Pictures, or anyone behind the Godzilla series. Visit our website at godzillavangelists.com. We're also on Twitter at GodzillaCast and Instagram at Godzillavangelists. If you prefer to listen to us online, we have a YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you join us again next time. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.